I'd like to say hello and thank you for having us. We are in Australia. We're both from Sydney, although Annette, my very good friend and colleague, is not in Sydney at the moment, but about 600 kilometres north. So we're in different locations, but we are from a little company called STEAMpop, and we both work together in other areas of education at the moment as well, but our little company is called STEAMpop. So we have to share with you this evening nothing as sophisticated as the bell ringing, but we do need to qualify our inclusion in your group in that we are not mathematicians, but we are very interested in applying mathematics to what we do, or the theory that underpins what we do is based in mathematics, and that is really just taking some simple concepts to the general public, to people that may be scared or unused to sort of delving a little bit deeper into their mathematical kind of knowledge, which everyone has. So I think Annette is going to share screens. Annette, do you want to say hello?
Oh, hi everybody. It's about 7:30 at night now in Australia, so greetings. I'm going to share the screen. Oh dear, wait a second, just a minute. I've just got to get on that and I'll share it now. And screen 2. Can everybody, just a minute. Can everybody see that?
Yes, looks good.
Okay, terrific. I've worked, that was the first thing I have to worry about. This presentation that we're about to show you is really what we take into schools, mainly for teachers, usually maths teachers, but also art and design teachers, because what we're trying to do is, I suppose, promote transdisciplinary learning in high schools in Australia. So this is the sort of introductory presentation, and then we will show you, or Melissa's got down there in Sydney, she's got all the little making things that go along with the presentation. So it really is a making using mathematics to make some beautiful objects. So I'll start the presentation now, and we'll see how we go. So now I think I need to do this, don't I? No, that's not working. Whoops.
That doesn't really matter. What we generally start with is a kind of backwards engineered story, which is related to the solar array.
Oh yeah, look, it's working now.
Yeah, which is really just the components that and the thinking that and the making and the experimenting that came up with NASA's development of the solar array, which was sent to space to provide energy for the International Space Station. And so we just start with that as a connector and a bit of an explainer of the underpinning of first biomimicry and then making and then mathematics and then how that might be applied.
So we're really just, no, sorry.
You go on.
No, I mean, what I'm saying is our name STEAMpop is really about STEAM and the transdisciplinary beauty of that learning. So, you know, most of you would have seen the Sydney Opera House. And again, that is a beautiful mathematical solution to some of the problems that Jorn Utzon had in making the sails of the Opera House and manufacturing those sails, so he didn't have to create individual, it could be mass produced, the actual arches, the arcs of the sails could be mass produced. So they use this what they're the spherical solution, taking parts out of the sphere. So that's another thing we like to show. Some of the other things that we like to show is that connection between science, mathematics, design and art. And, you know, just as an example, we've got this diabetic jewelry, again, a designer working with biotechnicians and medical scientists, data visualization and things like the water cube, you know, based on soap suds and that theory of those things hanging, those, what are they? Are they
poly-
yeah, they're, anyway, geometric shapes hanging together like soap suds. So in the water cube of the Beijing Olympics. And then we might go back, right back to perspectives, etc., geodesic domes, Leonardo, again, trying to make those connections between science, art and maths. So it just helps a lot of teachers relax a little bit, especially if they're not from a science or maths background, and go, okay, we can start to see how this sort of underpinning occurs in everyday life and in art and design. Okay, Mel, do you want to introduce this a bit?
Yeah, the project that we're sharing with you today is one of our projects, not our signature project, but it's an offshoot of that. And it's called Binary Bugs. And it's really to explain to some people anyway, the concepts of binary, probability and symmetry in a very much a making session for teachers and students and the general public. We've presented this in a number of different locations and found that it's been a really kind of joyful experience for a lot of people just to put those ideas together. Annette, do you want to?
Yeah, I am moving. I'm moving.
So we basically just for the for young people, we just go through the concept of binary being, you know, thought of as on and off. So let's keep going. Well, this is just some of the interesting, or some of the connections that we make for the teachers, who then start to make those connections in their programming for their students. So we don't use this when we do a version for the general public. It just depends on what we're doing, what workshop we're running at which time. So let's just keep going through this section. We have go on.
I was about to say, we like, because it's in schools, we like to actually introduce some literacy into this as well. Again, looking at, you know, words with by involved with it. Now, then we bring in we've got binary. The next thing we do is bring in probability. And so we do this with the general public as well, because one of the ways that we're going to make patterns is we're going to use binary and probability to make a pattern. So we look at a bit of this. And then we talk a little bit about that. So this is a game that Australians play, or Australians and New Zealanders play on a special day, Anzac Day. Probably one of the only countries that celebrate a defeat in war. And one of the things we play is this sort of tour where we just flick coins and people gamble on it, heads, tails, that sort of thing.
It's actually been banned at any other day except Anzac Day because it's addictive.
I'm just having trouble doing this. Okay. So this is just some ideas. We try and embody some of the ideas about elementary symmetries, just to get the kids, you know, if we're doing it with kids or whatever, you know, they can hop, they can walk, they can dance, etc., etc. So this is some of the other techniques we use.
So basically putting it together, we actually just really want to have some fun.
So what we're going to do is, when we start this thing, we've got some scored templates, and what we're going to do, what we do with the general public, if we do it in a craft festival, or if we do it in some of the festivals that we participate in, or if we do it in schools, we go, what we're going to do is we're going to use binary, probability and symmetry to actually make a pattern. And Mel's going to show you how we do it.
Yeah. Am I?
There, Mel?
Yeah.
We're going to go. Oh, we're going to go back.
We probably don't need that, because I'm in the interest of time. What we might do is I'll keep you there. What we do, and I'll ask you to go forward in the slides a little bit.
Yeah.
We talk about patterning. We talk about the 17 wallpaper groups with people. We just mention the context, the cultural context within which these are applied. you know, from former times to current times. We talk about the pigeon as a bit of a comedy aside, because apparently pigeons can't recognize patterns. So it's just thrown in there as a little bit of light relief for the people who are, you know, engaging with this. We talk about Gombrich, who is the art theorist, who also was sort of interested in these kind of binary types of patterns and geometry, and in relation to Truchet as well, Truchet tiling. So there's a relationship there. So you have an art historian, an art theorist, and a mathematician sort of working on similar types of ideas.
And then we talk about, and then we, of course, go into Escher and the 10 tessellations. And then we go into this little fun thing, because we've actually run some workshops at the Museum of Mathematics in New York. And this is
quite interesting, because I think Glenn Whitney is here, and I think he designed the monkeys.
Okay, so do you want to, we'll show you a little bit about the pattern making. We've got this as well. But we can talk about that in a bit later. Yeah.
Are you going to go?
You want me to go forward with it? Sorry, we're not in the same room.
So we start with like Annette said, I've got this piece of paper here. If you can see me on your screens, I'm not sure if you can. It's a scored piece of paper. We start with the concept of symmetry and geometry, and go through the axis of symmetry. Let's move forward.
Yep.
And we have a little template here that I'm showing you on my screen, which I've drawn my lines on, and it has a missing axis. So we ask people to fold or pencil that in. Let's keep going, so that we end up with 8 triangles. And then we might ask students, if we're with young people, we'll ask them about symmetry, we'll ask them about geometry, we'll ask lots of questions, because that's what we like to do. We kind of riff off each other while we're presenting this, and then we put some of the ideas together using the conventions of folding, which are hills and valleys, valleys being green and hills being, or mountains being red. And we're just concentrating on using this small template to define what we mean by mountains and valleys at this point. And then we introduce the idea of this probability. So we're going to be a coin.
Yeah. So what we do is we give everybody a coin. So they have a heads and tails. They get everybody a pen, and everybody gets a little square that Mel has, and we ask them to number it in the same order, from 1 around to 8. So this is what we do. And then what happens is people flick they flick the coin, and I can't remember, heads is no color and tails is a color. Doesn't really matter.
So that's just the convention that we apply. Yep. They toss the coin 8 times.
So what they're going to do is toss it 8 times. Some people will get a virtually fully coloured piece of paper, maybe with 1 white. Sometimes they only get 1 colour. Sometimes they get, 2 or 3. So we basically
go on a little bit. There we go, and 1 more.
Yeah.
There, and that's the sequence. You'd be surprised. It's interesting how many people are unable to toss a coin anymore. So a lot of people just bring up a probability app on their phones, but we like to be, like embody this experience, because there's nothing like the sound of like 100 people tossing a coin in the same room.
So then, and it is also amazing how many people might get the same pattern. So we often say, hold it up. How many people have got the same pattern? So
and then we ask questions. Yeah. We ask questions about the amount. What is the amount of how many patterns can you create if you all start with your triangle in the same position, number 1 triangle in the same position, and it's basically just a binary calculation. So I've got, I think that I might be around the wrong way. I've got a little template there for you. Let's move on, and then we can.
So basically, this.
Yeah, go on. You go on.
So basically, wait a second. We had the template is basically a scored glide reflection. So it's scored horizontally, vertically, and then on the diagonal. So I'm just wondering if I can use this. No, I don't want to try and do that. And then we show them a little bit about what a glide reflection is. A reflection and a glide, or a glide and a reflection. It's a bit like walking in the sand. And so we try and explain a little bit about that. So here we are.
What we might do, Annette, I think, is keep going forward with these so we can actually show the principles too.
So what's going to happen now is everyone's got their little square and they're sitting there, and we ask them to actually start to plot in their pattern by colouring in the triangles. And it is amazing how much concentration is needed to actually do this. And you'll get a lot of silence. A lot of people will make mistakes. And then what they do is they'll go along and then they'll reflect it over. And so they'll start to get their pattern, and then you'll start to get something like this. So these are the flat. You'll see there's the flat, and then when they fold it, that's what we get. And we'll talk a little bit more about the folding in a minute. So it's just a really nice way of making pattern. People are quite excited by the fact that they've made these patterns and how they actually got to make the pattern.
Just jumping in there, the patterns that you see in front of you now are what we have two types of patterns. We have the glide reflection pattern, and we have what we call the double translation. And all of the patterns in front of you are actually a double translation. There's no, there's no apparent, there's no reflection actually embedded in those, or there might be an apparent reflection. So in front of me now, I have a glide reflection pattern, and I also have, maybe we could stop sharing just for a moment, and I also have a double translation with the same sequence, and they're slightly different patterns on the templates. I don't know if anyone can see me on the little tiny screen, but anyway, we'll
put it on speaker view. Okay, so now we introduce biomimicry to the teachers, students, people, because what we're doing is creating a fairly biomimetic form by folding. And we just talk a little bit about that. We explain what that is.
So this shape is actually a component. It's part of, it's like an arc of a sphere, or if so to speak, it's a section of a sphere. Pardon?
I've stopped sharing now.
Okay. So the section, the sphere, the section of the sphere becomes a kind of a curved shape when we fold it. So it starts off, this is one that hasn't been patterned. This is, like I said before, this is one of the patterns that we've created just for this evening, and this is the shape that it makes when it's folded. Okay, so it's all the same shape. We have many different components of this, and what we will do after we've made the shape is stick it onto a kind of a backing plate, and then we light it, which I'll show you in a minute. But basically the glide reflection is just this beautiful shape, which I think, Glenn, I know you've said the monkeys with somebody else, but I do know that you have one of these shapes in your house. So, or where you used to live. So these beautiful flexible shapes are basically formed from the glide reflection pattern. And we just noticed just what a kind of biomimetic shape that they made. And so we created them into these sort of bug shapes, which I've got many of them. But what's interesting is that you can create the same shape. I have so many here. If you rotate the shape 90 degrees, it just creates a different type of pattern. So, and then we decided we would light them up, and I'll turn my lights off in a minute, but we've got a little LED underneath in this to light them up. And often, children, if they're doing this project, create little antennas on them. And we have many different styles and shapes and a lot of different, black and white forms. But we also decided to add a different component to our making in that we create a paper circuit, which you can see just here. So we do some circuitry, and some science, and they're always a little temperamental, these ones, and I've been testing it, but anyway, there we go. We've got a little, it's a little bit of flashing going on. I'll have to get that ready. But what I'd
Sorry
like
to
to do
interrupt.
is,
You have like 4 more minutes.
Oh, okay.
Right.
So
Great.
we'll just go back for a minute. I'll just share the screen again.
I'll turn my lights off.
See what else we've got. So basically what we do is we talk a little bit about symmetry and complexity, and we talk about the different folding, because if you turn it one way or the other, you get a different type of flexibility. We talk about valleys and hills, which are the conventions of folding. We talk about a little bit about biomimicry that occurs. And then we also talk about how important folding is in our world. And so we've got things like the heart stent, which is actually the same fold that we use, disaster, architecture, which is folded up tents, this wonderful little bit of clothing that expands as the child grows, airbags, umbrellas, all the sorts of things that we do. If you want to have something small and make it bigger, folding is really important, and physicists and mathematicians work out these fold patterns.
So we might have to leave it there. And I don't know if you can see me, but I'm just doing my little flashing here. That's our information there if you'd like to get in touch.
And these are our little binary bugs that children have made.
But to tell you the truth, the adults that have made these as well, they've just had a joyful experience at the same time.
Yeah, they love it. Yeah.
So yeah, we're just just having a little bit of fun with a little bit of math and some making. That's what we do.